A new industry centered on digital control is expanding. This industry pretends to ensure compliance, and it also, to a large degree, it succeeds in subjugating individuals. And this is done through different systems of control. These systems monitor how you use your time, what you use your time for, and they are decided top down, so they're very undemocratic. This compliance industry wants to ensure maximum productivity, but they also have unintended consequences. They stress people on a continual basis. For example, systems that monitor your time, your output, and that what you do is done in a way decided top down. So it's not very flexible. And if there are ways of doing things in a better way, this cannot be done, because then the algorithms will stop that from happening. So oftentimes what these systems want to accomplish does not give a better output, because you can't be flexible to ensure that the customer gets what the customer needs. So maybe it seemingly looks like it makes things more profitable, but it doesn't make things better. Not for the customer and not for the people working. And there are several problems with this society of maximum control top down, and like non-existence or very little possibility to influence how things are going to work, very little flexibility. It's a lack of democracy, and that is, that being only output and result oriented in a way that you can't influence deprives you as a human being from being in existence. If you never enjoy the process of what you're doing, irrespective of the result, you do not actually live. The systems of control that we have created through digital means make us machine-like, into some sort of zombies working on stimuli response to obtain pre-decided results. And this is isolating human beings to their left analytical brain half. We have, we're reduced into some sort of machines, and in this dystopia of ever increasing control, there's no room for contemplation, just being in nature, being in the world. There's no room for creativity, for art, for well-being, for togetherness or community, because you're constantly there to produce something. So we become isolated in constant competition with each other, and this isolation leads to ego-centeredness, and is contrary to who we really are, because as human beings we have a need to help other people. We're social creatures, and we have also a spiritual core of wanting to be united. Like, the truth is that we actually are. Like, nature is like interconnected. That's the reality of it. And we'll chop it up in little bits. So this compliance industry is ever expanding, and that has negative consequences, both on the individual and on the societal level. So why do we see this ever expansion of digital control? It's because decision makers with paranoia try to cure all ills of society through controlling subordinates. The people with decision making powers themselves and with a lot of economic resources are not the ones being controlled. They are controlling subordinates. And saying the good cause for this is to control, to stop corruption. But I don't know, as maybe you know, corruption is on the top, happens on the top level, not, you know, people on the ground. The big money is on the top, and those are the people that have the leeway, but you only control the people, the subordinate people on the ground. So what they actually do is to use these control systems to monopolize the marketplace. They create formal requirements that make it harder for smaller companies to compete. Bigger companies are able to lobby for laws, regulations, standards, and other formalities that hinder that are unable, that smaller companies are unable to live up to. They don't have the administrative competence or sufficient resources or capacity to be able to follow this up. So this ensures that money flows only in the direction of the big companies that often sometimes buy up the smaller companies also just to consolidate the market. And this is the hallmark of capitalism, is an exclusion machine constantly working to build up hindrances for others. And the more we see that the marketplace become monopolized, the more products and services become expensive, standardized, mass-produced, and of low quality because there's less competition. States are actually meant to stop companies from becoming too powerful through antitrust laws and other means, but today states have become weak. They collaborate with these big businesses, and many of these big businesses are stronger than countries themselves. They can have more money than several countries taken together, like Microsoft and Apple. As a consequence of this development, inequality is on the rise. And this has been empirically documented by Thomas Piketty in his and he documented it in his book Capital in the 21st Century. And a development like this is not socially sustainable. The super rich amass more, the middle class shrinks, and more people fall into poverty, unable to find an affordable place to live, they're unable to pay for educating their children, to eat healthy food, or find meaningful work for themselves to sustain themselves and their families. But this development is not environmentally sustainable either, because it rests on the premise of extractivism. It's sort of the opposite of contemplation, like enjoying, to just observe nature, to observe your surroundings. You want to extract what you need, what you want. And individuals and countries that already have more, it's easier for them to extract more, so they can live an even more comfortable life. So the ego only wants more and more, and has invented concepts like green growth and sustainable development to be able to extract more. We throw away 2/3 of what we produce. The ego has more than enough, but it wants more shiny objects. It wants gold coating on the ice cream during the World Football Championship. It wants the new electronic car every third year. And now it also wants to feel sustainable while it buys new shit that it doesn't need. So this is an addiction of wanting more and more in hope that finally this will lead to happiness. But worldwide, we see that people get more depressed, more isolated, more lonely with all sorts of diffuse diseases. And here in Oroville, they want to encourage a new consciousness, a consciousness that has evolved, and through connecting with your spiritual core of caring, of togetherness, of community, and to the state of being, that we need to be there for nature, be there for others, and experience the world for the first time as a newborn. So I don't know if this is possible, but several communities that are developing their communities according to permaculture, growing, and so it's worth looking into how these experiments work, because this control is detrimental to humans by pretending to solve problems that it is unable to solve. But now you might ask, yes, so we don't need control? Is control always bad? No, control is not always bad. It can be used for the positive. Control is not bad in and of itself. Control that succeeds in doing away with socially and environmentally harmful practices is positive. One example is, for example, the law in Norway that prevented people from smoking indoors. That was good for their health, and it went against the interest of the tobacco industry. And if you don't control, you can contribute in upholding harmful, unjust, and polluting practices and cultures. For example, burning waste inside or just outside cities, so you get massive air pollution and other health destructive behaviors or discrimination of various sorts. You can use control to try to change these things. But the problem with today's control systems is that they do nothing to stop these type of practices. Instead, it facilitates practices that are profitable for the elites rather than benefiting local communities. They're not solving any of these problems. And people see this, and they spend enormous amounts of time on these systems to try to influence them and change things. But there's no possibility to influence decisions or change inequality generating systems, because decisions are for example, in city development, it's pre-decided what's going to happen in contracts, and enormous amounts of money would it would cost them enormous amounts of money to change this, and nobody is consulted beforehand. So it's just pretend democracy, and people have seen that, of course. So they try to set up this digital systems to let people come up with their opinions, but as long as it doesn't change anything, it's not democracy. It has to be real, you have to allow for real influence. So we're in a world where everything gets commodified. Even spiritual practices like yoga and meditation, we are to continue in the rat wheel, go home and meditate, and then come back to continue to run in the rat wheel. There's no sign of any real change of the way we organize society, the way I see it. To change things, we would need to care more for nature and for other people. We need to integrate compassionate service into the system, rather than trying to accumulate more things that we do not need. So we need to realize that we have to start doing things differently rather than pretending to do things differently.